Um, Last time I was talking about generosity as the third of the faith, ethical conduct, generosity. So as the third of the seven Arya jewels, and we talked about the generosity of offering material things. And so today I wanted to do that generosity of protection. Yeah, from protection from fear. So this is usually described as like if somebody's traveling and they're lost, they don't know where to stay, they don't know how to be safe, then you take them in, you give them instructions, you make sure they know where they are and that they're okay. Or when there's bodies of water and little insects drowning in them, you scoop them up. Here what we want to make sure of, especially in the summer, is that when we have buckets of water outside, that we cover them so sentient beings don't drown in them. Um, I think this also falls into protecting our kitties when we take them outside so they don't catch birds and mice. And also to, especially since yesterday was the first anniversary of the Parkland massacre, protecting sentient beings, I think also means getting involved in letting it be known to our legislators that we want better gun laws. Yeah. They would say, oh, protecting sentient beings, somebody's going to get shot, you shield them or something. How about preventing the whole situation to start with? I was thinking, about what happened a year ago, and there was one kid who he shielded another one of the students, and he died in the process of it. There was another boy who was also, he leaned against the door so that the shooter couldn't get in. He took 5 bullets. He didn't die. He thought he was going to be paralyzed, and he's learning to walk now. Yeah, which was really wonderful. But if you look, the number of children and the number of people altogether in this country dying because of guns, and not just homicides, suicides, accidents. I keep thinking of just 45 minutes away at one of the, I forget if it was Target or Walmart, there was a mother who was shopping. Do you remember this a year or two ago? And she had a purse that was, a gun-proof purse so that your kids couldn't open it and get at the gun. But her toddler opened it and shot her. And the kid has no idea, had no idea what he was doing. He was playing with a gun, shot his own mother. He has to live with this his whole life. And he's also without a mother, and she lost her life. And so, it's the accidents too and the suicides. Not just the mass shootings. The mass shootings bring our attention to it, but it's the other ones too. And I just learned that, like, about 2 blocks away from where my parents lived, 3 people just got murdered in their house. So, so I think when we talk about the generosity of offering protection and fearlessness in our day and age, I think that means we need to get involved in this kind of issue. Yeah, I think it's quite important. Otherwise, we save a lot of insects in the water, but how about saving some human lives too? So I think that's quite important for us. And then the third kind of generosity is the generosity of the Dharma, which they say is the highest generosity, because when you know the Dharma, then you have the possibility to free yourselves from lower rebirths, from samsara, from the limiting effects of your own personal peace or your own nirvana. So, we think, oh, that means I have to become a teacher and teach the Dharma. And many people don't want to teach the Dharma. That's just not their way. But there's many ways to teach the Dharma. You don't have to be sitting up in front of a group going blah, blah, like me, blah, 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 blah. And you're... Okay. Then there's ways of teaching the Dharma where maybe the people stay away. Yeah. So, for example, when your friends come and maybe they have some kind of personal problem, they're upset, they're angry, whatever it is, and you sit down and talk to them, and you can talk about Buddhist methods to handle upset and anger and so on without using any Dharma words. It's, there's totally secular ways and non-religious ways of explaining a lot of the teachings that the Buddha gave, because they're just common sense. They're nothing religious at all. And so when you help your friends and, counsel them in this kind of way, that's teaching the Dharma. When you say your prayers out loud, yeah, so that the bugs around you and the kitties around you hear them. That's why we have the kitties coming on Thursday and Friday nights, so that they get the teachings. That's also the generosity of the Dharma. Helping to publish books for free distribution. And I would say also everybody here does a lot of work proofreading books, and a lot of our volunteers in other places do too. And that's also a way of making the Dharma available to other living beings. So many ways also to give the Dharma. Yeah. And it's important not to be stingy with the Dharma, and yet it's important not to tell people things that they're not really interested in or ready to hear too. So it's kind of a delicate process. Yeah. And I think especially with people like family or friends that we had before we ordained, and they're kind of wondering, like, well, what happened to you? And you don't look like you did before, or you don't act like you did before. We used to go out and, drink and drug and go to the disco, and now look at you, that sometimes it's the way to give the Dharma to those people is just by being a kind, friendly person. Yeah? Because people they learn by looking at examples. Yeah? And if we're kind and friendly and treat people well, then, it's teaching the Dharma. I don't know if any of you knew Cindy from DFF. She may have been before most of you were there. So Cindy had lupus. She was in a wheelchair. She had bright red hair, and she worked for FAA. And she was renowned in her office for having quite a temper to match her hair. They used to call her Hellfire on Wheels, apparently. And one of her colleagues, these are the days when we had cassette tapes with teachings, and she would have the teachings in her little cubicle. And she started, by listening to the teachings, becoming a much nicer person and more cooperative at work. And one of her colleagues, I think more than one, started saying, well, what happened to you, that you're changing? And she said, oh, it's, because of the Dharma. And, do you want to borrow my tapes? And one of her colleagues listened. There was a series, I think, of about 150 tapes, and he listened to all of them. Yeah. So, there's many ways to give the Dharma. I remember one of my other Dharma friends, she was telling me that her sister was a Jehovah's Witness, and she just accidentally left a Dharma book, lying around the house when she was visiting, and her sister picked it up and then came to her afterwards and said, wow, you believe a lot of the same things we believe in, like kindness and compassion. Yes, right, And so that's the charity of the Dharma, just any way we can expose sentient beings and plant those seeds in their minds. Okay, so I think, of His Holiness, that there was a time several years ago. Well, no, actually, maybe it was only 3 or 4, because Boner was still the chairman of the House of Representatives, and they invited His Holiness to speak. I think it was in the Senate, and he spoke for 15 minutes, just something short. But I thought, wow, Mitch McConnell, Rick Cruz, no, Ted Cruz. I always get them mixed up. Okay, Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell, they saw His Holiness. They heard some words of compassion. This may be the only seeds of, any connection with the Dharma that they have for countless eons. So, the charity of the Dharma is quite important. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking a little bit about the order that we were pondering, why the 7 jewels and this order.
Yeah.
And you also, I think you taught, when you taught the, how's it called, the 41 prayers to cultivate bodhicitta, there was the order learning before generosity and ethics before learning. And faith
really?
first, yeah.
And the order there.
And I was thinking, because it's from the letter to a friend, from Nagarjuna to a king, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he may not have had the conditions that a far advanced practitioner yet would have for the 6 paramitas.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, for example, I was thinking about the learning, but if you practice generosity, but your ethics are impure, I was thinking, I put different examples. For example, a politician who wants to build a wall, not protecting people. So he may be generous, but the generosity doesn't have the same merit, so to say.
It's like our cats.
Right.
They practice generosity, but not ethical conduct.
Yeah. And if you don't learn the Dharma before you practice generosity, you may also not be able to judge who's the best to give to.
Mm-hmm.
You may give to somebody who is seemingly very learned, but you don't give to a yogi who's meditating.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, that's why it seems to me like in many ways learning should be earlier. Yeah.
So when you were talking about the people who helped to proofread, it just made me think of all the volunteers who helped to give the Dharma through your website and also the Abbey website, some of whom have been doing it for decades, all with a very sincere motivation because they benefited, they want to give back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely the people who built the websites, who keep them up, who, do the articles and post things, and so much help.
I was thinking to have faith that's not blind faith. Learning needs to be there too. I think we need learning through all the stages.
Yeah.
So, no matter which order you listed in. But I was thinking with the generosity, it takes our focus away from ourselves to other.
Mm-hmm.
And that, not harming others is the basis of ethical conduct. So I was thinking about it that way when I was looking at the 6 perfections, because that's the order it's in.
Yeah.
You learn to get out of yourself a little by being generous, and then that focus of other is a big basis for the next.
With ethical conduct, we focus on others too.
That's what I'm
That's-
saying.
yeah.
That you're building a foundation for ethical conduct by getting yourself out of. So you start to learn to
Yeah.
give. You start to be concerned with others, and then the whole ethical conduct is
comes,
concern
yeah.
for others. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
yourself.
interesting because when you look at all of these and start thinking about the order, you begin to see that actually the order could be changed because this one leads to that, to that, to that, but also the latter lead to the former too. Yeah, and we begin to see how all these aspects of the path are quite interrelated. Yeah, and so even though, with the Lam Rim, they say it's the gradual path. And they even say that some people learn one meditation and don't get teachings, they don't request teachings on the rest of it until they've actualized that one meditation. I don't think that's for everybody because I think you need to have a whole understanding of the path just as at the very beginning so that you understand where you're going and what it's all about. Yeah. And the more you look at the different meditations, the more you see, not only does the first ones, they act as the basis for the ones after that, but the ones after that are what give a lot of meaning to the initial ones too. Yeah. I mean, once you start hearing about the 6 perfections, that makes having a precious human life much more precious than before you heard about bodhicitta and practicing the 6 perfections. So the point is that all these things really are interwoven. Yeah.
Even in terms of faith, what I've been thinking about is how important the step of admiring faith is as the spark that gets you going. And, it takes a long time to get much further in faith. You have to go through the whole 7 and all the 6 and the whole Lam Rim in some ways before you even get to a deeper level of even aspiring, much less having that conviction. So to have the seed that's able to admire, that being so very precious.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just reading something. Someone was saying that in Asia, people have this automatic kind of faith, and which is quite beautiful, and it opens the door for them to really learn the Dharma. Whereas in the West, we tend to be much more skeptical and we hold back. On the other hand, in Asia, because they have this automatic faith, then they can be exploited by people who are not so ethical. Yeah, they can not exploited, but maybe gullible. Yeah, and so in that way, Westerners kind of, we want to check things out and observe first, can be, very helpful, that kind of critical thinking. But so you see, faith has one benefit, but the admiring faith can also, if it isn't hooked up with other qualities, it can have a detriment. Wanting to check things out and investigate has many good qualities, but if it's just becomes cold and cynical, then it shuts you off. Yeah? So here we have the famous middle way again.